Hello, everybody. I will call this meeting of the City of Boise's Public Works Commission to order, and we will start off with a quick roll call. If you are here, please let me know. Commissioner Ellis,
Here.
Commissioner Collette,
Here.
Commissioner Pagan,
Here.
Commissioner Wernz,
Here.
Commissioner Lockett,
Here.
Commissioner Morgan,
I'm here.
Commissioner Thornfelt.
Here.
Awesome. Thank you all. Before we kick off farther into the agenda, I just want to, first of all, acknowledge and welcome Council members Corliss and Nash. Thank you for joining us this evening. And also want to just acknowledge right from the get-go that yesterday was a big day for a lot of us, and maybe a late night, and maybe a big day today. So just want to let us take a moment to breathe deep, breathe out, and remember that we are here to, do the on-the-grounds work, serving everybody around us. So just want to bring that that vibe into our meeting as we do set the course for this coming year. And thank you all for your service and your continued dedication to the City of Boise and our community. Next up on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our last regular meeting on October 2nd. And with that, I would entertain a motion.
Chair, if I
Commissioner
may,
Lockett.
I would move one slight addition to the minutes. In section 3, please. I just would like to add a note about the budget. It's a really important part of the discussion. Long-term sustainability was great, climate resilience was great, but I just want to add the word budget. So would you like me to propose a sentence, or it could just be noted, just a
Yeah, if you
clerical
would,
addition.
I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment that you would
Well,
propose, however you would like to say that.
let's see. We could say, Chair, we could say climate resilience, comma, long-term sustainability of the community, comma, and budget implications, period.
Cool. And before a motion, I believe there might be another comment, just to make sure that we get it all in the first motion the first time around.
Thank you,
Commissioner
Chair.
Ellis.
I noticed I'm in the minutes and I was not present at the last meeting,
All right.
October 2nd, right? Yeah.
Commissioner Wernz?
On that same note, I noticed that even though Jen wasn't here, she seconded something. So we just cleared that up
Correct.
too.
I seconded the meeting
Yeah.
approval minutes, meeting minute approval, and I was not there. For
All
the,
right.
it was May was the last one before that. So
I
I don't know
believe-
if maybe I got mixed
Mhm.
up with someone else.
I believe I did the approval then, or the seconding on that one.
All right, so I believe the motion may be to amend the minutes as submitted to reflect the absence of Commissioner Ellis and update the second on the approval of the minutes to reflect the second was made by Commissioner Wernz, if I remember, if that was your recollection. And then also to add the budgetary item to the discussion notes from section 3. All right, so if that, are there any other notes before a motion? Oh, so I need to get a motion. Okay, can I get a second?
Chair,
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any- Hearing none, the motion carries, and the minutes from our previous meeting are adopted as recommended and updated. Now, to keep the meeting brief today as well, I would ask unanimous consent to strike 2 items from the agenda and either follow those up as an email or include them in a further meeting if further clarification is needed after that meeting. And those are the items, the Public Works Overview and the Public Works Commission Role, Responsibilities, and Logistics. Are there any objections? Hearing none, then we will remove those from the agenda and move forward. All right, and that takes us to the first item on the agenda here. There are two positions on the commission up for election in this meeting, and those are the roles of chair and vice chair. And for the first item here on the agenda, I would accept a motion, a nomination of a chair.
Chair.
Commissioner Morgan.
I think that you have done a beautiful job of facilitating this team, and so would like to nominate you to continue as our chair for the next year.
Thank you. I'll accept the nomination. And is there a second?
Chair Gravett,
Yes.
I was
Commissioner-
made anyway. I wholeheartedly second that.
All right. Thank you. All those in favor of appointing me, Crispin Gravatt, as the chair of the City of Boise's Public Works Commission, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And thank you for your continued trust and support. Up next, I would entertain a motion to nominate the vice chair for the Public Works Commission. Perhaps first I would open up the floor to my fellow commissioners, to any of you who may have any questions, comments, concerns, threats, or clarifications before you may express interest in the role. Going once? Going twice? Commissioner Wertz? Oh, I saw you reaching for your mic.
I was just making an adjustment.
All right, well, I would.
Prior to a motion, Chair, could
Sure.
we just have Commissioner Ellis give us a few words about some of the extra duties you had as vice chair?
Sure, thank you. I'll let
Sure.
Commissioner
So we
Ellis.
can continue to adjust our mics.
My interpretation is I am backup. So doing the same thing that chair does when the chair is not available. That is my interpretation so far. And I haven't really been called upon to do anything beyond that. So to serve in place of the chair.
Yeah, and I would offer over the course of this year, if any of you are interested, my support and mentorship through the role. And my experience is that role in the leadership on this commission is really what you want to make of it. And if it's an opportunity for you to fill in as backup, then that's a noble role in itself and has been useful more than once. And then if you would like to learn more about taking leadership and reaching out to the community, I'm more than happy to offer what support I can in building this roll out some more. Commissioner Ellis?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a motion to nominate Commissioner Wartz as the vice chair.
Commissioner Wertz, do you accept the nomination?
I am reaching for my mic. I will accept.
All right. So we have a motion. Do we have a second to appoint Commissioner Wertz as the vice chair of the City of Boise's Public Works Commission?
Chair. I
Commissioner, I will second.
All right, we have 2 seconds. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And thank you. All right, and that brings us, after the removal of the next items, to additional topic consideration as the next item on our agenda, and I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. This item is really just for you all, the commissioners, to raise any issues you're hearing in the community, ask questions. In the past, we've had commissioners at an end of meeting say, hey, I had a question about for example, the Orange Energy Bag Program and what can go in that, or I heard about this, can you help me understand so that I can go back to a citizen and explain? So this is really just a open mic, any questions that you have, anything you're hearing, and if nothing, that's fine, we can move on to the next item, but just wanted to give you all an opportunity to share perspectives that you might be hearing out in the community or ask questions.
All right, anything from the commission? I'd open it up. Commissioner Lockett?
I had one thing that was interesting that happened to me the other day. I thought folks might appreciate, I think one of the questions, and maybe this is later in Melissa's section, but I learned something new, and that is that when you sign up for trash services, you pay a $300 deposit. That was interesting to me. And my question is for anyone on the team, when that happens, if folks are unable to pay $300, do you prorate it? Do they not get trash services? Does that not come up as an issue for folks? I just was sort of surprised at that, and I'm sure I paid the deposit, but that's a long time ago and I didn't remember. And so that was something that I wanted to share with all of you. That is part of our fee structure at the city.
Chair, Peter, do you have any thoughts on the $300 deposit? I know that there are ways to potentially waive it. And that obviously it's given back at the end of the service, but anything to add? And if not, that's okay. We can talk to Heather and get more detail on it. Can you go to the mic?
Afternoon, Commission. As far as the $300 deposit, I don't know the exact numbers. I know that new residents do have to put a deposit down and that businesses also have to put a deposit down. I don't have it memorized exactly how much it is, but I believe you when you say it's $300. Seems a little high to me. I don't make those numbers, but I can certainly check with our billing department and get back to everyone.
Yeah, we'll follow up.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And just for context, it's a family of 5.
Okay.
If the family count factors in, I know the family count factors in on a toilet water, right?
Right. It
What's
doesn't.
the proper name for
in-
toilet water? Waste.
Yeah.
So family of 5, if that helps.
Thanks. And it's just a residential household,
Right.
correct? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. The number of people that live in the household doesn't have any effect on it. Just,
Okay.
I do know that.
And in the past, we would have like our finance folks here, like if Heather Buchanan was here, she'd be able to answer very easily. But we're trying to keep our senior managers, if they don't need to be here, then we'll give them a break from the commission. So we'll go and talk to Heather and we'll be able to get an
That's
answer
great.
very
It's
quickly.
not urgent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? All right, hearing none, I think we will move on to the next item on our agenda, and that is the Recycled Water Program wrap-up discussion. And I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, thank you all so much for the discussion we had last session on the recycled water program. I know it may have felt awkward at times, but you all were asking the right questions. And part of it was to honestly, let it kind of sit with you all and breathe some of the perspectives. Because, we could see your thinking started to evolve into like, that's exactly what we thought. Like you'd start to like connect the dots in ways that's like, okay, we didn't see that coming, or that was an interesting perspective. So I apologize if that felt awkward, but it was helpful for us because it was a good discussion. You had some really interesting perspectives that we've taken note of and will be adjusting certain things accordingly. We do want to wrap up the discussion. We didn't finish the whole discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to staff, to Haley Faulkner, who's going to lead us through the rest of the discussion and wrap up on the recycled water piece, and then we'll move on to the materials management. Haley?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Chair, commissioners, council members, glad to be back talking recycled water with you and wrap up that discussion. I'll start with some intro. Abby will give a little bit of a follow-up, try to revisit some of the topics that we'd covered with Brandon, and then Abby and Melissa will lead us through our exercise here at the end. And just as a reminder, we kind of jump right into the middle of this with the follow-on conversation, but the recycled water program's goal is to really support our efforts around water. We want to be conserving water, but also creating a water supply that allows us to prepare for the future. And this program, kind of this initial start of it, has a target of purifying 6 million gallons per day of water that will go into the groundwater. This water will be recycled by purifying the used water from industry as our starting point. So kind of just you all have heard it, you've heard from us over the last year, but anchoring that in kind of what we're doing. Oh, too many things to click here. And by way of introduction, and trying to humanize our intros, Haley Faulkner, Water Renewal Programs Senior Manager, really proud to be in Boise for the last 15 years with my spouse and our 3 kids. And Even on weeks like this, the work that we do here at the city really matters. I'm really proud to be up here talking with you about this work and this program and hopefully the long-term impact that it has at the city. And then Abby, did you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, thanks, Haley. Hi, I'm Abby Hayden, Communications Coordinator for all things water at the City of Boise, Water Renewal Services. I have been in the East End for about 3 years. I live with my partner and our dog. We have a Pointing Griffin named Otto. He is wonderful. And yeah, really excited to talk to you about recycled water today.
I will go over the agenda briefly, but to Steve's point, like y'all's questions and commentary and input really matters so much. And I'll talk about it here in a slide, but just the way we communicate about this work, it matters a lot. And we learn so much from you in what we're sharing, what we think we're sharing, and how it's being heard and what's hitting the mark and what's not. And it's just tremendously helpful. So today we're really following up from that session about a month ago, talk about the drivers and the outcomes and decisions for the program and where this conversation fits in. So give a little bit of context to this conversation and the broader program. We will briefly review and clarify some of the model results that we had shared. That was a point of some good discussion, and we left feeling like we could have done a better job of explaining that. And so we want to try again. And then we'll really focus on those groundwater recharge site benefits and engage you all in an activity that will be important data and information for this. So what we heard last time, and this maybe is a point of confirmation. So we heard and continue to hear from you all in the community that climate resilience is important to our community. The context here is creating a water supply that stays local. One of the things that you all brought up that we've been talking quite a bit about in the last month as well is that water conservation is also a part of this picture when we're talking about water collectively, that it's not one or the other, but is really interconnected. And I think important to mention to you all that we are working on those pieces, some water conservation plans, drought mitigation plans, pieces of work that Steve mentioned in the assured water supply, recycled water being a component of that broader water strategy, but recognizing how important it is to talk about those things in a connected way. So we can see this recycled water program piece as fitting in more to a broader water picture. We continually hear kind of the importance of flexibility, forward thinking, different scenarios and examples that you all had shared. We talked a bit about emergency management. I think there was some fire strategy, different pieces that we wrap into this program and how we build that flexibility into where we're headed. And then the last bullet will be one that was probably something we'll talk about indefinitely, but just the value of refining and simplifying our messages, specifically here around groundwater recharge, but recognizing there's not really an end location for that. We don't develop a message around groundwater recharge and then we've made it. That will evolve and develop over time as we learn more and we hear more, and keeping that at the forefront and certainly having our professionals to help us with that. So that's a pretty broad overview of what we heard a month ago. Anything to add? I guess recognize we're going to dive into some of the details again of what we talked about, but anything that folks wanted to make sure we got on the list here from last time?
Any items from the commission? Doesn't look like it.
All right, we'll keep rolling. So I think just zooming back out on why are we doing this? Why have we been here talking with you all for more than a year on recycled water? And so there's kind of two pieces of this equation. The recycled water program does solve multiple benefits or address multiple challenges for us. On the system needs side, we need to expand our system. There is a driver for that. We do have to have additional capacity. There are multiple ways to do that. Recycled water and building these new facilities to do recycled water is one way. We also will have to advance the levels of treatment that we use at all of our facilities as regulations change and there's increasingly stringent water quality requirements. Again, wherever that water goes. So that's kind of the system needs side of this. But we also want to be reflecting the community expectations in the work that we're doing. And so that goes back to climate change and drought, keeping water local, supporting economic activity. And if we were to kind of draw the circle around these two sides, the recycle water program helps us get these things. We are talking about a new facility that's 6 million gallons per day. So that's physical infrastructure and new capacity on the left side. And in doing that, and part of our conversation with you all is producing this high quality water that does stay local and does help build that resiliency, and is a creative and different solution. We were at the Ada County Water Summit this afternoon, and just part of that conversation of envisioning water for the next 30 years is what other solutions, what else needs to be in play. And this is a piece of that. And there are a lot of pieces, we've shared bits and pieces of the program with you all, and maybe zooming out a little bit on some of the big decisions that are coming to set some of that context for the things we're asking you about specifically, because these are all pieces that are being worked on simultaneously. So we've identified a site for the facility. We've shared that location with you all, but we've got these other questions. What's the flow coming to the facility? What's the water quality that would be coming? And what are we going to set as any limitations around that? What treatment technologies will we use, leveraging data from the pilot? What's the quality of the water at the end? We know what our kind of minimum safety and public health standards are, but what else does the community expect? We'll talk about how we recharge. We've given some overview of that. What we're focused on with you all is around the where of groundwater recharge in particular. So kind of setting the context for all of these pieces that are going on, not for any amount of overwhelm, but just recognizing, because some of those questions have come up, like we want to focus in on the potential sites for where groundwater recharge can happen and what could the benefits of one site over another be. So this is a really important decision. It's one of the things that we have to make as a program in order to keep things moving. And we're excited to hear from you all today. And the things that we will go into that conversation, I think you all had asked us some of these pieces last time, which, can we do it? Is it technically feasible for a particular site to be used for groundwater recharge? Are there any negative impacts that we want to consider? Is there a cost differential? Are there policy implications? So those pieces are all going into the sites that we're bringing forward, the 2 sites for comparison. But we also want to hear what is it that our community values and how do these sites compare in the context of those other pieces. And all of that will get us to this recharge site decision. So the information for today, I think important, like you all are a critical data piece on that. Your feedback provides critical data to inform that community value, which is a part of the broader discussion or kind of broader decision that we're making. And so I think just to set the last little bit of context, I think this is my last slide before Abby. Maybe I stole some of my own thunder. It's kind of important baseline pieces for the 2 sites that we've so creatively named Site A and Site B. They're both feasible. They both can be beneficial for groundwater recharge, and they are safe for recharge according to the technical analyses that we've done. So I think as a foundational, we're not bringing something forward that doesn't meet those as foundational requirements. What we want to hear from you is, are there differentiators from a benefits standpoint between those 2 sites? And you all really started getting to some of those benefits that you could see in that last conversation. And so specifically, is there a benefit to the community in where and how quickly the water gets to certain places? Because we're talking about the groundwater recharge component of this. And this is the part that I stole my own thunder. Like you are a representation of the community values in this kind of the benefit of the location of where groundwater recharge happens. So we aren't making a decision today, but we're collecting information from you all to help inform that decision that will be made. So hopefully that helps set some context. And before I transition to Abby, any questions for me or kind of context setting that would be helpful before we jump into some of the more specific modeling pieces that we shared last time?
Any questions before moving forward?
All right,
Doesn't look like it.
Chair, thank you. Go, Abby.
Okay, let's shift gears into managed groundwater recharge. And let's start with just how it works. A little bit of a recap from last time. So here we've got a graphic of a well that's going down into our groundwater layer. You can also see the river along the left side of the image. Our groundwater is naturally recharged by rivers and streams and other surface water bodies, but it is not recharging as fast as we are pulling it out. right? So we're starting to see water levels decrease because we are sticking so many straws down into the glass before we're refilling it back up. And so the way that managed groundwater recharge works, and I guess reminder, Haley, you said this at the beginning, we are working on a groundwater recharge program that will be located in southeast Boise in an area that is specifically dropping in groundwater levels. So we are specifically targeting an area that will be beneficial for our community as a whole. What we'll do is we'll build a well that will send water down into the ground. And you can almost imagine groundwater as like damp sand or soil. It's not a big lake or river that's underneath the ground. It is water that is sitting between cracks of rocks and super wet sand, essentially. And so it moves really slowly through those layers. There's a flow to it, but it's got to creep through different cracks between rocks. It's got to flow through super wet sand. So it moves really slowly underneath the ground, but it follows a current much in the same way that a river follows a current, or even I was thinking about like those big cloud images where you see clouds like swirling around and then moving around the atmosphere. You can almost imagine that happening underneath the ground, but so slowly. I could not say that enough times. So let's talk about how slowly it moves. This is the groundwater model. We looked at this last time. This is a technical piece of information. I'm going to do my best to explain it, and then happy to take questions and clarify it as best that I can. First, what is a model? What are we looking at? A model is an estimate of where recharged water will flow over time. So we take data that we have today based on samples that we pulled from the site and historic data that has been collected over time from many sources. We put it into a computer, and that allows us to predict what will happen in the future. You can kind of think of this as like a really high-tech weatherman. So what's going to happen in 10 years, what's going to happen in 150 years. When we're looking at near-term dates, we know that that's probably more accurate. We can have more confidence in knowing what might happen tomorrow. If we're looking out to 150 years, it'll slowly start to get a little bit more uncertain. We might not be able to predict like, hey, it's going to rain on this day 150 years from now, but we know what the general pattern is. And what does this mean? Let me take a shot at explaining what how the groundwater moves underneath the ground. So imagine that I take a gallon of water and I put it in that red dot right in the center of site A. Over time, that water is going to move through the sand and soil underneath the ground, and in 10 years, it'll start to hit the edges of that inner circle. And then in 25 years, it'll start to hit the edges of that next circle, right? So you can think of like drops of water from that first bucket that I poured down the well, starting to reach those outer layers because it's moving along the current that exists underneath the ground. And then let's say 10 years after that first bucket, I put another gallon of water in that red dot. It's going to follow that same pattern of time. So it'll be another 10 years before that second bucket hits that outer layer because it's following those natural currents. So everything kind of moves at the same pace to reach these bubbles over time. Any questions about what we are seeing here on the screen?
Commissioner Lockett?
Chair, I think I'm full of questions today. Remind us, please, how many maybe miles approximately would be from the site A red dot where you poured your gallon to like the 25 to 40 year, the outer circle, or there's a scale there, but it's cut off, and I just need to be reminded of the context, please.
Okay, well, I did Google this before, and I tried to, I sorted this out. So, for example, we're talking miles here. So this is the one that I put into Google Maps. We're looking at about 4 miles from that red dot out to that blue triangle as the crow flies.
Thank you.
I
That's
didn't
very
calculate
helpful.
it for this one, but we're talking miles. And I think if you brought your printouts from last time, I see Commissioner Wertz has his printouts. You might be able to see our crossroads and how far it is, but it's a big scale.
about 4 miles. Thank you. Very helpful.
Commissioner Mertz?
Thank you, Chair. My question was, you said a gallon of water. Does it matter what the volume is as far as the rate of flow that's modeled there?
So this model is built on our predicted flow rates. So I would say yes.
Yeah, Chair, Commissioners, to Abby's point, she's giving the example just to show like that water's moving in, going, and there will always be a gap with the next gallon. For the actual rings here, that was the 6 million gallons per day. So the timeline would shrink with more flow or would get longer with less flow.
Chair?
Yes, Councilmember.
Question. Yeah, thank you. So, great presentation. We talked about that we're pulling out more than what we have in there today. How are we as a city measuring our groundwater today?
Chair, council member, I think that is an area of ongoing work right now, because certainly we don't have all of the groundwater data. We do sit on the Southeast Boise Groundwater Management Area Advisory Group. That's a lot of letters in one acronym, which is shown on the next map. So we participate in that with not just the city wells, but all of the wells that are gathered and the data for kind of that orange area that's managed by the Department of Water Resources. Certainly we track it for all of the city-owned wells, whether that's parks or city-owned and on the farm. But that was just to reference the Treasure Valley Water Summit again today. It was a big topic of conversation, was the need for a more collective and regional strategy for groundwater, because it's not a one size fits all. Like, we know things are dropping in the Southeast because there is this groundwater management area, but that's not a reflection of groundwater in the whole valley. So there's definitely a need for a more regional approach.
And Chair, I was just going to add that to Haley's point, there's so many different layers of groundwater as well. And so the idea that we may have a shallow drinking water well that's drying up doesn't mean that our long-term deep water supply is in danger. So it's a pretty complicated question. The Department of Water Resources developed their groundwater model, which is kind of a first attempt at getting to these questions of taking all of the different well data that we do have to get a sense for how groundwater is reacting, how it's flowing, where it's falling, where it's rising. In fact, our work is predicated on some of basically taking that model and refining it down to like on an even more granular scale for this particular site. So it is a topic of discussion. It's a topic of concern. And folks are trying to figure out, we need and understand that we need to get a better handle around our groundwater supply and the aquifer and how it's behaving.
For follow-up, probably Steve, this will probably for you. Does Veolia report to us on a cadence, their well levels?
Chair, council member, not on every well, although we are working with them more closely to get well data, and we've been talking with them as part of the assured water supply provisions in the modern zoning code. We're asking them for more information on the performance of their wells, depth of groundwater, and they're giving us that information over time. So we'll have more information in the future to be able to work with them and partner on, if they're seeing a well that's of concern, let's talk about how we can work together to address.
Other questions from the commission? Right, seeing none, back to you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to bring us back to a month ago. We looked at two sites. We looked at Site A and Site B and had some discussion about what benefits might be different between the two sites, or what might be benefits for choosing a site in general. So I wanted to recap those here, and then thought we could add a few more, if any come to mind. So I pulled up Site B first. This is the one that's co-located at the recycled water facility site. So we already own this plot of land that's boxed out where it says Site B. That's where our recycled water facility will be. And we can also put a groundwater recharge facility there. It is also within the groundwater management area and has a few differences as far as proximity to industrial water wells, drinking water wells, and then that span of time it takes the water to travel to those places. So I'm just going to read off these benefits that we listed last time, from the commissioners. Contribution to the groundwater management area, that is a site that is protected, that we know is dropping, and our water will contribute to that groundwater management area if we recharge here. We are near industrial users. You can see those green triangles are industrial water wells where industry is pulling water out of the ground. Facility co-location reduces cost. So we already own this plot of land. If we put our groundwater recharge site here, we don't have to purchase another site. Facility co-location potentially reduces sprawl. Surrounding area is developed, thereby reducing unknowns. There's already some development happening over here. Right across the road there is Micron. We're by an Amazon sorting center. So, or not a sorting center. Yes, a sorting center. We're by an Amazon facility. And so that might reduce some unknowns, and then also easier access for the community compared to the other site, which is a little further from main roads. And then I'm going to go over to Site A right away. This is our other potential site. You can see Site B is still outlined here. So a little further away, we would have to purchase the site, build pipes to the site to put our groundwater recharge here. But there is a difference in travel time to the drinking water wells, which are those blue triangles on the map here. So the benefit that we had listed for Site A was that there are shorter travel time to drinking water wells. So I'll pause there to see if there's anything else we want to add here. I can also prompt some thoughts if needed.
Any other input? Commissioner Burns?
Thank you, Chair. It's a general question, but it's about the footprint you need if you're going to do injection wells is pretty small, I think. If you're going to do infiltration, you need more land to have the water on the surface. So I don't really know the size of these, but are there going to be a need for buildings, pump stations, things like that? Or could it conceivably be a pretty small footprint?
I think Haley or
Yeah,
Steve.
I got it. Yeah, Chair, Commissioner Wentz. Yeah, certainly much smaller than infiltration. I think distribution of the wells will matter a bit so that we've got the distribution of the groundwater flow and we don't see that mounding. So I know there's some modeling of that, but as far as the other infrastructure, pretty limited buildings, maybe a pump house or well house so it'd be small compared to the kind of big infiltration ponds. The size of Site A is much more than we would need for injection.
Other ideas or questions from the commission?
Chair.
So, yes, council member.
Yeah, I have a few on this. Could we compare the time between the two?
Mhm.
Could you maybe need to bounce back and forth between the slides?
Yeah. So here you can see that first, those first green triangles that are closest, those are right around the 10 to 25 year mark. We're hitting the first drinking water well in about 70 to 150 years, that blue triangle in the bottom left corner. So that's Site B. Site A, you're hitting that drinking water well for the first time somewhere between 25 and 40 years compared to 70 to 150.
So my question would be, what are the goals of the aquifer recharge? Are we thinking about industrial use? Are we thinking about residential use? Who are we best trying to serve here?
Chair, council member, I think we want to hear some of that from you. There's been some conversation within the program that's a few years old now on the highest and best use of this water. And a big piece of that is to offset drinking water that is being used for non-drinking water purposes. That's really not well said, but that's the goal, is that we are able to preserve drinking water so that it can be used for our community in that way and offset it in another way. So it could be, we want that volume of water in the ground so that it can be put to beneficial use. Steve, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to add, Councilmember, that part of the recharge component. You mentioned industrial reuse. That is definitely part of the program that we want to pursue. But we always have to have a place for the water to go 24/7. So let's say it's somebody using, industrial users using it, they're down for maintenance for a day or two. With that water's got to go somewhere. So the recharge component is kind of our, we call it our fat spot in the line, where it's like, we'll always have that as a backup in case somebody's not taking the water. If that helps.
And is the water delivery fungible in that if we're recharging an aquifer that might be otherwise used for industrial uses, but that's offsetting water that might be used for drinking purposes elsewhere? Like, is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. And sorry, Chair, Council Member, that's one of the concepts that we are probably not communicating very well. The idea that one of the benefits that comes from reuse is not necessarily the direct use of reuse, right? It is to broaden and diversify our water supply so that whoever's using this water then is not using drinking water that then can be used by somebody else. So we've had people say like, well, I want access to this. It's like, in effect, you are, because we are releasing other water supplies for use for other purposes that you may use. If that makes sense.
Chair, sorry, I got a few on this one. I've been doing a lot of work on this part of town for a little while. The Site A, do we know who owns it?
Site A is the airport, as I recall. Yeah, so the airport owns that site, and I believe it was purchased with FAA funding, I believe. And that creates a different kind of like complexity if we're going to purchase the site.
We'd have to purchase it from the airport.
And or lease it.
And Chair, Site B, well, I'm thinking about this, both Site A and Site B in the context of like Lake Hazel Extension. And I'm wondering if there have been any talks with VRT about Site B and what opportunities might exist for public transit facilities there, given its location, its proximity to the railroad, which the city owns, and 94 and Micron, and that functioning as a hub should something like Lake Hazel Extension go in.
Chair, Councilmember, yes, that has come up recently. We're working with our economic development folks and with VRT to make sure we understand what are the possibilities, what are the considerations, and what role would we play? Could we play? Could we offer acreage? Still very early, but we're aware of that item and working with Sean Keithley and economic development to better understand what the possibilities are.
Yeah, and it may not be like directly related, but I remember that we've had conversations in the past about this Site B that is also the site of the renewed water facility, and making that a space for public art, a space for like a third place for folks to gather. So that seems pretty in line with some of those ideas. Other question, Commissioner Ellis.
Chair Grant, thank you. I'm looking at it. Site A and Site B are approximately 2 miles apart. Am I looking at that right?
Yeah, that's fair.
And do we have ideas of why the speed of the water traveling is different? Is one higher elevation than the other, or are there other things going on?
Chair, Commissioner, who's going to answer? I think two things change here. The Site B is closer to the Boise River, so it's less about the elevation of the ground and more kind of what's the water patterns. And we didn't bring back in the zoomed out map for this one to show that generally the groundwater in this area does flow south and west toward the Snake River. But in Site B, we've got kind of the pull from those industrial wells as well. So that changes how that water is moving and kind of pulled. So I think you see some of that here, and the directional change as with a little bit of proximity toward the Boise River. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Chair, Commissioner, I think I'd also add that the drinking water well is closer for Site A, just in space compared to Site B.
Closer, just like as the bird flies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Chair?
Councilmember.
Yeah, as we look at either of these maps, who owns the drinking water wells there and who owns the industrial wells?
Chair, council member, the drinking water wells, those are both Veolia. And we do have a broader map that shows individual wells, but because of the size and scale of their wells, these are their drinking water wells. And then it's Micron wells are the three industrial wells that we're showing here. Okay.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Thornfeld.
Just thinking about kind of what you guys were talking about with the industrial wells versus drinking water wells. Like my understanding is that most of the water that is being sucked out is being used for industrial purposes. So I was just wondering if it going back to the industrial wells is kind of setting up more of an equilibrium that we have now.
Chair, Councilmember Sue and I look. I don't know, I guess the quantities off the top of my head to know that with certainty, but yes, I think by maybe less about which type of well, knowing that there are limitations on additional wells and development in the groundwater management area and adjacent to that, this would be a place that would start to create some of that equilibrium by putting more water back into. Abby's straw analogy earlier, I think, is a great one. We've got too many straws and not enough going back in. Does that help? Okay.
Commissioner Wertz.
Chair, something that made me uncomfortable in the first part of the discussion we had was whether or not there was a goal that was oriented to enhancing drinking water supply via injection, which is what we're talking about here. But some of that is predicated on the public really understanding that recycled water is safe enough to drink. And there's disconnects in a lot of the general public, I think, on where water even comes from, that with the drinking water that we have, it's coming from groundwater and the Boise River. So I guess that's one of the things that I think we'd want to be really clear on, because the program has the benefits of industrial reuse. So you're not wasting high quality drinking water, you're reusing it for industrial purposes. But I think where there's a bit of a leap, I think, to then say, and we're also with the exact same program enhancing our drinking water wells, or potentially addressing depletion of groundwater with the goal of having the recycled water be used for drinking water ultimately in 25 to 150 years. So it's just one of those things where I think it's a little hard to wrap your brain around those dual uses.
Chair, Commissioner Wertz, thank you for that comment. It's something that we're grappling with. There is the potential, and this is where we start getting into the engineering speak, which is awful, but it's the indirect potable reuse is what you're describing, right? That it's not intended purpose is drinking water, but we understand that it will reach a drinking water well, so therefore it's an indirect potable reuse. How we describe that and how we talk about that with the public is a challenge, and really appreciate you articulating that kind of like, yeah, you're going to struggle with that, the balance of industrial reuse and we also have this recharge that could turn into drinking water. It's a complicated, so I appreciate the comment. I don't know if you had anything to add.
Chair, if I may, I think part of that, and I might ask Abby to ask a follow-up there related to the second to Site A, because that was the benefit that we heard from you all, or the potential benefit was a shorter timeline. I think we want to pull at that thread a bit with you all. I think the challenge with the communication is almost more getting folks to come and talk with us, because once they do, and the hundreds of people who came through the pilot and understand that these technologies exceed drinking water standards, as they should for what we're talking about as an outcome, then it's a very easy connection to make. It's getting folks to come and engage in that conversation, which is the challenge of kind of the public community engagement process. But certainly we recognize, kind of back to one of those first slides on the water quality, what should that be for which purpose? We recognize how important the water quality is for this exact outcome. I think the question to you all is talking about on the next slide, the details of that shorter travel time being a benefit or not. I mean, you all will get to put your pretend money to work here momentarily on each of these benefits. But I think this is not us making a statement to you. That's really us wanting to hear from you the confirmation of this as a benefit or not.
And I do, the One Water sort of branding, that education campaign, I think could lead into communicating a lot of this sort of fungibility of water in a lot of this, especially if we do have the opportunity to build a space similar to the Boise watershed as an education space, as an engagement space to really drive the message home.
Chair, I would just add, the outreach that we did as part of the utility plan in 2016, 2017 timeframe, it was very clear that the community was not comfortable at that time with drinking highly treated wastewater effluent. And that was a question we asked, and it was a very clear, like, we're just not ready to go there yet. And so part of our conversation we're having internally, that's been coming up on 8 years, 7 years, 8 years ago, and kind of asking that question again. And then, I think this dialogue around recharge and impacting drinking water wells will kind of bring that back when we start going back out to the community with focus groups and talking through it. So.
Sure.
Council member?
Yeah, my question is, if we are prioritizing drinking water wells over maybe industrial uses, which may be a difference between sites, does Veolia have an obligation to use those wells for City of Boise residents or residents within City of Boise's area of impact? Or could these wells be used for uses south of Boise?
Chair, council member, thank you for the question. I mean, it's probably best answered by Veolia. In the end, they are a drinking water provider for their service territory, not specifically for the City of Boise. And so I don't want to answer for them, but I suspect that their perspective would be, we don't delineate our service area and our water supply to only go to one city or one group of users. It's a system that needs to operate and move water wherever it's needed at the time that it's needed. And so I suspect that's how they would answer, but I don't want to answer for them. And maybe in the future, we could have them join us at a commission meeting. I know they'd be willing to do that, to talk about things like that.
I would have questions at a meeting like that, Chair, about us doing aquifer recharge and servicing Veolia users that may never be in our area of impact. And if there's more utility, and like if we know there's going to be industrial uses and we know that will offset pressures on other drinking water within the City of Boise, especially as housing demand continues, there's going to be more pressure to develop south of Boise. Asking who we're ultimately serving with that aquifer recharge, if those, what our goals are prior to that decision.
Thank you for the feedback. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and then if I remember, maybe something to build on that, some of the previous conversation, as we do continue to grow and see more volume in our water use, it may not be an either or, it may be a which first for these sites. Commissioner Words, did you have go ahead?
Chair, yeah, cost is something we haven't talked about. And are there any rough numbers for comparing? I mean, A has to be purchased, so you already own B, so there's a cost there. And then there's a lot of infrastructure that would have to be built from the industrial clients to, or at least some of them, to site A. So that's all collector or pipelines, if you will. So is there any ballparking of the cost differential between the two sites that?
Chair, Commissioner Werns, not at this time. So I think any pipelines, so thinking collection pipelines of the wastewater, if you will, would just go to site B, and then site B would have then potentially pipelines back to industry for that industrial reuse, and then to site A. So that cost, the cost that we had originally looked at, and I just don't have it in front of me, just for that pipeline between B to A for the groundwater recharge part is not insignificant because of the amount of basalt out there. So, you know, what did we say, 2.5 miles of likely blasting to be done to get that pipe in the ground. I don't remember the rough, you know, range of cost per mile, but substantial.
Yeah, I would say probably tens of millions.
Yeah.
For that pipeline.
One question that may not have an answer quite yet, but if we are looking at not an either or, but a which first situation, are there any significant impacts to having both of these sites serve as potential future well sites on the overall aquifer and the direction of the speed that it might go depending? And if there's any benefit to doing one first versus the other, just in the health of the watershed there.
Chair, I don't know that there's enough of a differentiator that we could share that here today. There's enough aquifer capacity for us to put the volume, like 6 million gallons a day sounds like a lot in the context of the aquifer. It's maybe not a huge needle moving to have that at one site or the other, or even have it at both sites. I don't think we would experience, what we've modeled, we wouldn't experience the mounding. So I think either could go first.
Thank you. Any other? Yes.
Yes, this is maybe a question also not for today, but I appreciate what you were saying, council member, about getting Viola here and Veolia. How do you even say them? I don't know.
Yeah.
The point is, how easy, this is why I'm like, this is not an easy question. How easy is it to then also drill additional wells closer in if we were to select site B? If city were to select site B, can you drill more wells? Would that be any benefit? Like, we're just like eyeballing, you know, we've got 5 wells we're talking about here. Like, can we talk about 10 wells or 15 wells? What would be the benefit to additional wells?
Chair,
time?
Commissioner, I think I'll take this one. So it's certainly possible, right? It's something that can be done. I think my question back to you would be, for example, looking at A and B, there's a significant difference between travel time to drinking water wells. And so my question to you would be, would you see benefit in adding wells that are closer to the injection site? And if so, why? What would those benefits be? Or if it would be more beneficial to have a longer travel time, what would the benefits of that be?
Chair, I mean, certainly I can answer that, or we can get to it in our sticky notes. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if the water's safe at, you know, 12 years, like, yeah, try to drill a well there versus tens of millions in a line through basalt to site B.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, but these are all things you've thought of. I think we need to also understand the options.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for that.
All right. Any other questions or input?
Yeah, Chair.
Yes.
Kind of follow up with that same line of thinking is if we did have a well out there that on either site that Boise may be considered owning, we could see how much water is. I mean, I think the advantage would be that it's not taking so much time to travel out because it's closer to where we're injecting it. And then we would also maybe control some of that volume and that discussion of where does it go? Does it need for drinking water? Does it need for industrial? So I just think that may be something we want to consider.
All right. Anything further from the commission? If not, back to you.
Wonderful. Okay, so it sounds like we have a strong list of benefits here. I didn't hear anything else added to this list. We're going to do an activity. Melissa's going to lead us through a sorting activity of which benefits are most important to you. Certainly, if there's something on this list that you can think of, but I don't have it on the board up here, go ahead and write that down too. We're not restricted to just these options. But this is just a recap from the last 2 slides. We're going to talk about which benefits are most important to you all. And with that, I'll pass it to Melissa.
All right, Chair, Commissioners, and council members, good evening. We've gotten to the fun part here. So now we're going to take your input, which is really what we're here for. So you see that these benefits listed here for you. And we've designed an exercise which is designed to help us understand how you prioritize these benefits in relation to each other. So we're imagining that we're giving you $10 to allocate toward these benefits. So you're tasked with dividing that budget between the massive $10 budget between these benefits, spending more on the benefits that are more important to you, obviously, less on the ones that are not. You can spend all $10 on a benefit that you think is most important, none on a benefit that you don't prioritize. So we've given in front of you some pads actually, where you can actually just write out your benefit prioritization, the dollar amount you would assign to the benefits. We'll give you some time to do that exercise and just write that down. And then we'll take a break to do that. And then when you've completed that, we'll talk about that. You can share with us how you've prioritized those benefits. Any questions about the exercise?
For the folks joining from online, Commissioners Pagan and Colette, I think that if you put your any of your notes in the chat, I can make sure that we pass it along here in person.
Chair, thank you.
Any other question? Yes, Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you, Chair Kravat. Can you just help remind me the co-location ones? I'm not understanding co-location. Help me with that one again. Sorry.
Yes, Chair Commissioner Ellis, a co-location would be the location of the water renewal facility is co-located with the injection well on the same site, which would be Site B.
Okay, thanks.
Chair, could you also remind me on that, is it number 6, surrounding area is more developed, thereby reducing unknowns? I could take that. I guess I'm not understanding that one. Thanks.
Chair, Commissioner, this list is just gathered from the last meeting. There was one benefit that we heard was that the surrounding area at Site B, which is the site that we already own, which is closer to Micron, near a Winco distribution center and an Amazon facility, because the surrounding area at that site is more developed. We kind of know what's happening over there. There might be fewer unknowns compared to the other site, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere out by the gravel pits.
All right. Great. Well, we'll just give you a moment to do the exercise. Oh, and I should add, if you wouldn't mind putting these on a separate sheet of paper, we would love to collect these when we're done so we can record your responses. This is going to inform some of these decisions ahead of us, and also we can use them in the future to see how our community values may have changed over time. So we'd appreciate being able to collect when you're finished. We need some Jeopardy music here. I see a few pins are still moving.
The people who were done who are looking at you like, bang, 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 people still working. Give them like a 30-second.
Yeah, okay. We'll do a 30 more seconds here. There's a lot of thought going into this. Okay, have we given you enough time? A few pins still moving? We're good? Excellent. As you can see, I think the The team is very anxious to hear your responses. So let's move on to discussion. Let's go ahead and share how you spent your $10 budget on these benefits.
All right, I would just open it up. Anybody who would like to provide their feedback, feel free to chime in.
Sure. I will be the first one, I guess. So I put the highest value on contributing to the groundwater management area, as it is an area that is in need of continued help in maintaining the water levels. I think this could kind of help with that, especially since the industrial wells are kind of pulling from that area as well. And then I kind of had an equal thought of importance to co-location to reducing cost, specifically that it allows us to kind of continue building that program without needing to wait as long to regain some of the funding for it. As well as being near industrial users who are using that water resource. And so we can, as Commissioner have said, that it's kind of creating an equilibrium. And then also shorter travel time to drinking water. So this is kind of a balance of Site A and Site B. I'd love to see that other people besides industrial users are getting a benefit from that. And then the last thing that I thought was of importance was better access for the community so that we can continue the process of this water is usable and safe.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Pagan. Commissioner Collette.
Sorry, Chair. Commissioner Pagan, thank you. A follow-up question. Could you share with us your dollar amounts that you may have assigned to those benefits?
Oh, sure. So the highest was 3 for groundwater management, and then the 3 that were kind of equal in value to me were listed as 2. So, and then the last one was 1.
Thank you.
Chair Gravett, I'd be happy to go next. I had very similar values. I do have them up in the chat. So the 2 that were the priority for me, and I allocated 3 to each of them, was contribution to the Southeast Boise groundwater management area and facility co-location reducing cost for very similar reasons. And then the other 2 that were important for me were the known factors of the surrounding areas being more developed and then better access for community. I understand why we'd want to be closer to industrial users, but kind of thinking long term, I think there's going to be so much industrial sprawl out that way anyway that even if we pick Site A, eventually it'll be closer to industrial users as well.
Thank you. I guess I'll chime in with mine. So most of my benefits and priorities were co-located around the co-location benefits. My top tier was $3 each to the reducing cost and reducing sprawl. I think those were, some top tier benefits. And then followed closely by the proximity near industrial users with $2. I think that's just a byproduct of the co-location as well. And reducing unknowns, especially for a big project and a novel project like this, I think any way that we can ensure that we're dealing with everything that we know, that we are reducing those unknowns, I think that will build a lot of faith among the community, a lot of confidence in the product at the end, especially to invite them over, provide better access for the community at a co-located site that features, education opportunities, transit opportunities potentially, and other positive externalities.
Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Corliss.
Yeah, so I chose three of the benefits. The first one is the contribution to the groundwater management area was $6. And the second was facility co-location to reduce costs for $3. And then surrounding area that we is more developed, thereby reducing the unknowns for the dollar.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Yeah, Commissioner Brents.
Okay, my benefits, I put half of the weight on, meaning $5 on co-location, reducing cost. And then I put $2 on groundwater management area and near industrial users. And each of those had $2. And then $1 on the more developed site, surrounding area more developed, thereby reducing unknowns.
Commissioner Lockett.
Okay. Thank you. $4 on co-location reducing cost. And the reason I feel that that's so important is that this is our first go at this. Let's, be conscientious of a budget initially. We can always expand. We can do more. I'm stuck on Haley's basalt in my head. This drilling like for 2.5 miles is like, it's like too much. So like, let's do it sort of on a small footprint to start, manage our budget well, and then see how it takes us from here. So that's why I feel like that one's so important. I love the idea of the two facilities being together. $3 on item 1. Obviously, this is because we have a lack of water in Southeast Boise, and that's one of the many benefits. But that's huge for me. You guys hear me say it every time. As a Northwest Boise person, we also have water issues, and I just feel like it's so important to bring that up at every meeting because we need water everywhere, but this is a great place to start. And then I did $1 each on near industrial users. Again, because that will be kind of as we do this first go round, it's important they're there and we can learn from our initial go at this. And then
You only get 10.
right? I act like I'm so bad. I'm at $12. They'll never notice. 1, 2, 3. No. Okay. So item number 5. I wish these were numbered, you guys. This is throwing me off. So item number 5 is why I'm counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 has $1. And then item number 7 has $1. I think that's great, but maybe we don't want to wait 75 years and then see what happens. Let's see what's happening in 12 years from now. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner. Who haven't we heard from yet?
Commissioner Morgan.
Thanks, Chair. So very similar reasons for what has been said so far. I put $3 toward the facility co-location to reduce costs. Then $2 both for contribution to Southeast Boise, the groundwater management area, and being near industrial users, and then $1 for all of them, except for 7. I just wanted to be controversial and say that maybe I really liked your point earlier, Stella, of thinking about if the initial use for this water is thinking about industrial users, trying to cause that equilibrium with those industrial users. And then an additional benefit is drinking water. Of course, that's very, very valuable and important, but I thought the other reasons were just help us to be able to prioritize a site that I feel like is making the most sense.
Commissioner Thornfeld.
Thank you, Chair. So I did $3 each for reducing cost and contribution to the management area. Again, with cost, I think like doing less now means that we can do more in the future. I think that's really important, kind of, getting our footing right now when it's not costing us too much. And then of course, contribution to the groundwater management area. That's kind of the whole idea. So I think it's important to, have that be important. And then I did 2 each for them being near industrial users and community access, because I think this could be a really great place for the community to come and learn. And, I think it could be really, really cool what we do. And then being near industrial users, just, put back in what they're taking out.
Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you. I put $3 on the contribution to Southeast Boise. I actually gravitated to that right away. And then $2 each to near industrial users and to the co-location reducing costs. Then for $1 each, I did the facility co-location reduces sprawl and the shorter travel time to drinking water. And then I gave 50 cents. I used every bit to surrounding area is more developed. And then the better access for the community.
Excellent.
Councilmember Nash.
Thank you, Chair. I put $8 on, I will say, I would not have done this prior to the presentation. This would have been, probably wouldn't have thought about it. But I put $8 on near industrial users. And the reason for that is I feel like if we can better identify the end user, we're more likely to reduce further demand on Boise water resources. And then I made up my own, and I put $2 on it. I probably share opposite views on the costs related to co-location. And the reason for that is it may be expensive to do co-location, but it will never be less expensive than it is today to do it. And when that area is developed, it's going to be very difficult to do that, but we might increase our flexibility now. If we might be, there might be residential wells that we really want to recharge 20 years from now, but we don't have the ability because it's developed and we can't get things in there. So I probably look at that a little bit differently because our goals might be different about where we need to recharge 20 years from now. And this area might look very different 20 years from now. And it might be very, very expensive or maybe even impossible to do that once this is developed.
Chair, Councilmember, may I say it back? So I mean, well, Elizabeth, it's like the cost benefit of the sort of early acquisition. That was a real mouthful of words right there, as I said them out loud. But essentially, I liked what you said about it will never be cheaper to do it. So you're adding a benefit of having site A, the second site, because of the potential for development. Is that okay? Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right.
All
back
right,
to,
thank
back to
you for this thoughtful discussion. Sorry? Did you have a comment? Oh, yes, I will collect the sheets from you. Okay, at this point, since we're going to go a little longer tonight, we have a presentation for you next of the solid waste, AKA Curbit survey that we did in September. That was a month-long community survey. However, we are all human beings with human brains and bodies and could probably use a break here to reset ourselves. This has been a substantial conversation, so we want to give you a moment to take a break. Shall we take a break and reconvene at 1:30?
All right. We will take a quick breather and be back here at 5:30.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Apologies to interrupt, but we don't have any audio on the virtual Zoom.
I'm so glad you said something. I thought it was just me.
Are you able to hear my microphone, Commissioner?
Yes.
All right.
And check. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. Maybe I wasn't close enough. Sorry about that. Before we dive into all the information, just wanted to quickly introduce myself for those of you who haven't met me. Peter McCullough. I've been at the city since 2007. I manage a great team of 6 people who really do the programs day to day and manage those programs. And we oversee the contract with Republic Services and work with CE closely with Melissa and Jen to really do our outreach and to make sure people understand our programs. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, went to school at Penn State, and lived kind of all over the West after college. And just a little tidbit was that I lived in the Grand Canyon for a year, lived and worked there waiting tables, which was really fun, and enjoyed that. And now live here with my family and just enjoy everything sort of outdoors that I can do. So, like I said, you can see the agenda there. I'm going to go over Solid Waste 101 real quick, talk about the strategic plan, community survey results, and then we'll give time for discussion after going over some of those results. I had a request last time from last meeting. I think it was from Commissioner Pegan to send out some information, just like sort of basic information on Solid Waste 101, what our programs are, how it works, sort of how we take in money. So that was part of your packet. I'm happy to answer any questions there to kind of get everybody up to speed if anybody has any questions. And if not, you feel free to email me separately. We can do it that way too.
Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Lockett?
Sure, just because it does relate to your write-up, which was great. This has all been really helpful. Thanks, everybody. You talked about the landfill reaching capacity in about 45 or 50 years. I thought that was really interesting. And so I was wondering, how big is the landfill currently? And like how much bigger it would be, just like space-wise at capacity, or if capacity maybe means depth, I don't know. And then what are you guys doing about the smell and the air quality? Sometimes I'll smell the dump and I'm wondering, is that bad for me? Is that bad for things, or is it just unpleasant? So a lot of questions, and I don't want to steal your time, so maybe we can hold that question to the end, but it does relate to your write-up.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair, Commissioner. Thanks for the question. Just to clarify, so the city doesn't own the landfill, that's owned by Ada County. They're constantly expanding it. So they do what's called new landfill cells, which, as you mentioned, are they measure them by cubic yards by volume, right? And so I don't know the exact volume that's left. How they do it is they do flyovers of the landfill, and they take that information and then they plug that into a computer and they estimate how much space they have left. And they can't use all the land that they own. There's like an area that surrounds it that they can't get too close to the border. So their latest estimates were in the 45 to 50 year range, and just maybe 15 years ago they were saying it was going to be 100 years, and that keeps going down. So as things change, that number could get lower. And I don't really have an answer for the smell question. I mean, I can say that landfill gas, I wouldn't want to be breathing it, and they do everything they can to take in that landfill gas and use it for beneficial use or flare it. And so I know that they're trying the best they can, but obviously there are some odors.
Thank you, Chair. I will reach out to Ada County and get more information. Thank you.
Any other questions before we dive in? All right, back to you.
Great, thank you. So just a little background on solid waste strategic planning. The city had a strategic plan, the last one that was done in 2007, right before I got here. There's some significant outcomes from that strategic plan. We did a waste analysis in 2014 that really looked at what materials were going into the landfill so we could try to target them. And one of the things that came out of that was seeing that there was a lot of material that was organic, right? And so that was part of the reason we started the composting program that we have now. Also mixed recycling, where we were realizing that people weren't recycling as much because their containers were smaller. So we got larger containers, let them mix the recycling. So that came out of that strategic planning process. So there are some things that came out of the old strategic plan. As you can tell, 2007 is a little bit outdated. So we started the new strategic planning process in July of this year. You can see the contributors up there. And I think the one that we want to sort of focus on is the community. And of course, Public Works Commission as representatives of the community. We want to make sure that we're going in the right direction from the get-go and understand what the community wants, hence the survey. Timeline's about a 14-month process, and we're scheduled to be completed by August or September of 2025. What's the purpose of the strategic plan? You can see here some of the main purposes. We want to develop action items that we can do that reduce the waste going to the landfill. We know that the landfill has finite capacity, and we know that there's better uses for a lot of materials. So we want to do everything we can to reduce that waste going to the landfill. We also want to listen to the community and provide the services that they want to provide. So we don't want to start a program that reduces the waste going to the landfill if nobody wants to participate in it, right? Because it's not going to work. So we want to listen to the community, see what services they want. We also want to keep climate in mind and the climate priorities. Solid waste and consumption are a part of the climate action plan. So we want to make sure we're paying attention to that and understanding that in our decisions. And at the end of the day, we want to have a guide for our programs, initiatives, and policies that will keep us looking forward over the next decade to understand what it is, where we want to go, and keep us focused on that. I will say, with the plan, it is we intend for it to be a living document. So we may write the plan, finalize the plan, but we understand that technologies change, money changes, council changes. So the plan will be a living document. We'll write it, but we can always add things in and take things out as appropriate. Quick timeline on the strategic plan and some of the key things that we're doing there. We started out with looking at our current program and making sure everybody understood that. The community survey, trying to get feedback from Public Works Commission. We're going to do a waste flow diagram, which is going to kind of picture where all our waste starts and goes. So you can actually just look at a diagram and understand it, because it gets kind of complicated. Develop those strategic plan concepts, score those concepts, have an implementation schedule, another focus group to give us input once we kind of get a list of concepts and ideas that we want to think about. Then we'll have a focus group that can narrow those down and say which ones they think are appropriate or which ones they'd like to see move forward. And then, of course, write the final plan and, work with council to get their input on the plan. So now we're going to dive into the community survey, and with the community survey, we're going to talk about the methodology, the results, and we're going to conclude with a discussion. You're probably going to have, you're going to see a lot of information, probably have a lot of questions. If there's something you don't understand on the question where it's like, I don't understand what the question was or what the results were, feel free to shout out and ask a question. We'll try to save the discussion of hey, what does that mean when we see this result? We'll try to save that to the end, and Melissa will lead that. But by all means, if there's something that doesn't make sense or that you need clarification on, just jump in and let me know. Yeah, so moving on. So our community survey, it was 22 questions. We were told by BSU, who really helped us with this, the Boise State University Policy Institute, and they do surveys for a living, basically. So we had their help. We had help from our consultant, HDR, and the materials management staff and the community engagement staff came up with a lot of the questions. So it was an online survey. It was distributed through text messages to about 45,000 customers that we have their cell phone numbers to text, the In the Know newsletter, and also our City of Boise social media. And as Steve already stole my thunder, we got 4,000 responses, which we thought was really awesome. And, you know, just a great response. And we're thankful to our public services for letting us use their text messaging service to get a hold of all those people. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the demographics of who we spoke to here with the survey, or who spoke to us, I should say. So you can see the age range there. You know, definitely a lot in the 55 plus category, but a good solid amount in that 35 to 54, and less in the younger category, as you would sort of expect. Now, these are usually customers that are paying the trash bill, right? That's the people that we're talking to. So some of the really younger people wouldn't even be doing that. But we felt like we got a pretty good age distribution there. This is our zip code distribution of who responded to the survey. And this one we're really excited about because we know that sometimes, you know, it's thought that, you know, we're only getting information from some certain zip codes. And you can see here where it's really spread out quite well, and the whole city is getting their input heard. Types of housing. So obviously, you can see that most of the people that answered the survey were single-family homeowners. About 6% were either multifamily or duplex, triplex. Just to explain that a little bit, one of the reasons for that, or the main reason I would say, is our largest distribution message was that method was that text message. We don't have information. We only have information for account holders. Our account holders are single family homes. If you live in, say, an apartment complex or a condominium, you don't actually have a trash account. The trash account's with the owner of that building or the property management company. So we don't have their contact information. So that's why we didn't contact them. So we're definitely gonna work on that in the focus groups and try to make sure we get some people in the focus groups that represent multifamily housing, because we feel like it's important. So as I mentioned, this is an online survey, and you know, it's done through SurveyMonkey. You can see a quick snapshot of it there. How many commission members took the survey? So half. Steve, you took it? Good. Yeah, and I'm happy that I think the survey and the results were included in the commission packet, so you can always look through there and see all the questions that are available. So really what we wanted to find out, we wanted to assess community knowledge and preferences and use of a few different things. Our current programming, right? We already have a lot of programs designed to reduce waste and divert waste. So we want to make sure those are being used appropriately. Communication and education, how do people want to be communicated with? What kind of education do they want and need? Values, what do they value? What kind of policies do they think the city could perhaps enact? And just a little bit about rates and fees, what they thought about rates and different fees that we can charge. So as I said, it's important to start with the residents, and that's why we're starting here. So we're going to start with current programs. There's 22 questions, like I said. We're not going to go over all 22 questions, but we picked some that we thought were interesting and relevant. If there's others that you guys want to bring up in the discussion, feel free. So we kind of grouped them into different categories, and the first one's about our current programs and how people, their knowledge of them and if they participate. You can see here, you can see the question about describing your household's use of the recycling program, and you can see the fact that, you know, almost 90% of people use it more than 4 times a year, and that, you know, 91% are using it. So that's great. It's a great participation number. It kind of lines up with what we see in our with our accounts in our billing system. So kind of showing that we're getting a decent representative sample here when we see similar numbers. So good to see that. Yeah.
Comment from Commissioner Ellis?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Gravatt. I wondered why you chose use 4 or more time. What was the 4? Because it's every other week. So 2 times 12, right? It's 24 times but this is all residential. So why 4?
Chair, Commissioner Ellis, thanks for the question. I don't know the answer to that question. I didn't choose that, I think, but I can just guess that, you know, we're just trying to see if people use it in general. Now, there may be people that just don't have a lot of recycling or don't, you know what I mean? They're the single person in their house. I've definitely heard of people who say like, oh, I put my trash out like every 3rd time, or I only put my recycling out. So we just wanted to make sure that they were using it. We weren't necessarily concerned with how much they were using it and trying to look at like tonnage or anything like that.
Chair, I just add, yeah, I think it was more of like, if it's 4 or more, then they're probably someone that's participating all the time. I think the other thing jumps out for us is like that number is the 89%, like cities don't see that. Like if we go to conferences and you'll see things pop up, 40% participation rate or 60%. It's a pretty phenomenal number, and a credit to the citizens. Again, these programs, they really participate and like the programs.
Thanks. Moving on to compost participation, you'll see there, if you kind of combine that 78% and the 6%, you know, really, really good 85% participation rate. And you know, this program is only 7 years old, so it's already getting close to the participation rate that we see in recycling, which is decades old. So I think it kind of shows how much people have embraced it in the last few years. Still some people have never heard of it, however, so there's always work to do. Compost give back and delivery. This is our 2 sites that we operate in the city where you can come and load up your own compost and use it on your home if you're a participant in the program. So, you know, definitely 80% of the people have heard of it and either heard of it or use it, and 30% of the people use it. Pretty good. I'd hope that some more people would use it, but I think, you know, we'll keep making sure people know about it. The people who use it are pretty passionate about it and use it a lot and want more and more. But it would be great to get some more people to use it too.
Chair, quick question. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Lockett.
I'm in the green there. Heard about it. Love to see when these guys smile and say like, oh my gosh, like we were obsessed with compost in Boise apparently. But I've never gone over and like claimed compost. I think that's a nice idea. So I think I might do it. So those guys have like maybe 5-gallon buckets. How does it work? Do I pull in with a pickup and just load into my buckets, or like what most commonly happens there?
Yeah, Chair, Commissioner, thanks for that question. You can pick up that compost. It's open. The sites are open every day. You can pick up to 2 cubic yards, which is basically a large pickup truck worth a year. Not that we actually enforce that. And so some people use those 5-gallon buckets. Some people use larger containers. Some people fill up their pickup trucks. Some people put a little tarp on the back of their SUV and then just put a little pile in there and then take it home. So they kind of do a variety of things, but yeah, it's up to you. And we also, with the delivery, we also provide for like a community or a neighborhood that has a project, we'll deliver a truckload up to 20 yards to them. And then as long as you just have to sign up online. And so if you have a community project that you want to use compost for, or a garden or something like that, we'll actually deliver it to you for free, which is great. People love it. And it's that delivery portion is growing every year.
Thank you. I will spread the word.
Yeah.
That's a really great benefit for folks.
Commissioner Ellis?
Thank you, Chair Gravatt. Robin, I was going to tell you that at Riverstone International School, they've signed up for it and they've had a truck come twice. So we had 2, we got lucky, we got a wrong date. And so we got lucky and got an extra truckload, but they're using it for their garden. So just when you do it, just remind people that there needs to be a place where the truck can actually come to and
Thank you. Moving on, we thought this was an interesting question. We wanted to understand how people were using the compost program. And so you can see that, half of the people, well, close to half of the people, 47%, they use it for yard waste and food scraps, which, we accept a certain amount of food scraps, certain types of food scraps. But we also have 44% that are just using it for yard waste, since they don't use it for food waste at all. And so that was interesting to us and made us think like, okay, why aren't they? And how can we get them to use it to the program to its fullest potential? We do know that, food waste, it has significant climate impacts, produces a lot of methane in the landfill. And quick little tidbit on food waste is every 5 pounds of food waste kept out of the landfill is equivalent to burning 1 less gallon of gasoline. So it's a pretty big impact. I mean, 5 pounds really isn't that much, right? So so just thinking about that and understanding that we have a good program that we can use, and we want to make sure we're educating people and breaking down barriers for them to use it. Our glass recycling drop-off program, hopefully most people are familiar with that. We have 2 ways you can recycle glass here in Boise. We don't put it in with our mixed recycling because it contaminates the paper, and a lot of it actually doesn't end up getting recycled because it gets broken and then it just falls through. So we're lucky we have a local glass recycler in town, Environmental Abrasives, that takes all of our glass. So one of our programs is these drop-offs are free to residents, and you can see that over half of the respondents use those glass drop-offs. And there's definitely 14% there that've never heard of it. So it tells us we want to make sure we get out the word on the program to make sure everybody's aware of it. And as I mentioned, we also have curbside glass where you can get another cart at your house if you produce a lot of glass. I'm looking at the wine drinkers in the group, and so you can get that, and it's only like $7 or $8. It's picked up once every 4 weeks.
Commissioner Ellis?
Thank you, Chair Gravatt. I have to say, this is one of the things I get asked a lot. I was really trying to remember when you asked earlier, are we getting any input from people in the community? And I do get asked this a lot, and everybody's shocked to hear that you can get an extra cart through Curbit and do glass recycling within your waste management for your home. So I don't know how else to get the word out, but I've been doing my best to get the word out about it. So then it made me wonder that if they've heard of it but don't use it, it would be interesting someday to know, are they then using the cart? They're paying for the cart instead of using the drop off. It'd be interesting to see.
Chair, Commissioner, yeah, thank you for that question. And I think you're right. You know, when we're talking to people out there in the community, it's true that there's somewhat of a lack of awareness that they can get the cart. And so I think that's definitely an opportunity for us to, you know, to increase that education and try to make sure people know. I know Steve has a glass cart. I see it overflowing when I ride my bike by a lot. So I know some people here do, but we definitely could have a few more customers. I believe we have about 2,000 subscribers to the CART program. Yeah, 2,000. So I mean, substantial, but definitely could be more. And then the Hefty Renew Orange Bag program. This we highlighted because we're honestly pretty surprised by the results here, that 52% of the public was using the program. Granted, it says, you know, 1 or more times a year. That's kind of combined with the 1 and 4, but you know, we estimated before that maybe 15 to 20% of the population was using it, just based off how many bags we collected. It's hard to tell, right? Because you don't know how long it takes somebody to fill up one of those bags. It just depends on how much that plastic waste they're producing and how much they remember to put it in there or forget and put it in their trash, right? But seeing this is good. You know, we're happy that over half the respondents are using the program. So good to see there. And then we kind of move on here to what materials go where, and that's sort of the questions that we always get when we're out at community events. And it's understandable, it's kind of complicated. We have a lot of different places where you can put different materials, a lot of different materials that go there. And we know that people will participate in programs that they understand and they feel like they're doing right. But if they get too confused, then they throw their hands up and say, I don't want to do it because it's too confusing and it's frustrating to people. So that's why it's important that we know this. You can see mixed recycling and glass recycling, pretty high levels of confidence there. Somewhat to extremely confident that they know what to put in those each of those carts. And so that's great. A little less there with the Hefty Renew Orange Bag. I think plastics are one of those things that are confusing to people. And even if you understand it, if you're like me, you can't read the symbol on the bottom of the plastic container because they keep making them smaller and smaller. And I'm like, is that a 5 or a 1? So it's hard. We understand, and you know, we want to try to make sure we reach out to people in different ways and explain it to them in different ways, and help them really participate in the program correctly. A couple more here. Compost program. Really, people are really confident there. Although we do see a lot of dog toys in the compost program, which I don't know why people think they can compost those. Household hazardous waste and medication disposal, a little less confident there. You know, household hazardous waste, pretty technical, a lot of different types of waste there, and people trying to understand if this is hazardous, this is not. So a little harder, and medication disposal, I think, you know, it's a small program that we have where you can drop off medications at the different drop-offs at police stations. And I don't think a lot of people know about it. And if they do, they're a little confused as like, well, what kind of medications can I put in there, right? So some work to do there. Now, these next questions are going to be more about communication and program education. So one thing that we've batted around for far too long, I think, is we'd like to have an app for all of our programs, right? So we know that that everybody uses their phone for everything now, so kind of makes sense. You know, and so we asked that question, how likely would you be to use an app if we produced one, and got some pretty good results there, 70% saying they'd be likely to use that app. What would we put on that app? Like, what would it be for? That we'd have to figure that out. I know people like to have alerts when there's changes or delays due to the weather, or if there's the LEAF program starting or things like that. So alerting people if they sign up for things like that, so they know, and just having a quick place where they can go and get to all our programs and see what it is they can and can't do. And then we asked people about educational resources, how likely they'd be to participate in these educational resources, free educational resources. What did we see? It's sort of a mixed bag, right? You kind of half and half here of people saying like, yeah, we do that, and then others not so likely. It may be these confident people that answered the survey. They're so confident they already know what goes where that they don't feel like they need any more education. That's could be possible, but definitely some support there in the orange bags, mixed recycling. You can also see here some stronger support for waste reduction challenges and repair cafes. I don't know if anyone here has been to the repair cafes that we've done for the last 2 years, but they've been super popular and everybody seems to love them. If you don't know what that is, you basically, if you have some sort of broken household item, appliance, or even a shirt or a jacket or something like that, you can bring it in for free, and we have expert volunteers that can fix things. And you bring it in and they try to fix it, and you fix it, and we save that stuff from going in the landfill, save you from buying a new thing, and it doesn't cost you anything. And our partners at Jump have been awesome with that, letting us use Jump and helping us with that, those repair cafes. So it's good to see their support for that. And then our next questions were regarding community values and policies. So you can see we asked how important it was for these benefits here, of waste and reuse and reduction programs. So a lot of support for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. That's good to see. We mentioned the landfill. We kind of phrased that in a little bit a different way because we know that it's going to be really expensive to build a new landfill. Everybody that lives in Ada County will have to pay for that. And so we said, well, it's important people to save money on building a new landfill and save the one that we have and use it as long as possible. And people were definitely supportive of that. Interestingly, a little less supportive when it's just personal financial incentives. Definitely it's still important to them, 60%, but I think that people in this community, they care about the environment. They want to do the right thing, even if it might cost them a little bit more. And we've seen that in other surveys that we've done. Some more here, reducing air pollution and improving air quality and reusing materials that can be reused again. It's real strong support there. We thought this was a really interesting question. Who among the following is most responsible for reducing waste? And you can see there that they overwhelmingly chose individual consumers and manufacturers. And it's refreshing to see people take responsibility for their own actions that we need to do, and to also understand that if somebody manufactures a product or a packaging that has 10 different types of materials in it that are all fused together, it's really almost impossible for us to recycle that because they made it that way, and it needs to have, we need to be able to separate all those things, and it's very difficult and expensive to do. So I think it shows an educated public here in this, and obviously they still think that, you know, the government has a role there with 14%. Like we need to be able to help, and we need to build these programs. We need to do everything we can. So interesting to see that, and refreshing. Then we asked like specific actions. What would you favor these waste reduction actions that the city of Boise could take? Developing policies to require, and you'll see require here a couple of times. It's interesting, right? We haven't in the city of Boise required much when it comes to solid waste or recycling or composting. It's all voluntary, right? We don't require anybody to do anything, but we thought like, well, let's hear what the public says. Like, should we require things? And obviously we don't make that decision. That would go through council and everything like that, but just wanted to hear what the public thought. So, you know, people were pretty supportive of requiring city facilities to reduce and reuse and recycle waste. Really strong support there. And then also developing new diversion and waste reduction programs. Strong support for that. More education programs, we kind of gone over that. Develop new tools and incentives for residents and for businesses. Definitely strong support there. We separate out businesses because they're collected in a different manner, and we don't have all the same programs we have for residential customers, and we'd like to see that change. We'd like to try to offer more to businesses. We know they create a lot of waste in the community, and in fact, create more waste than all the residents combined. We know that multifamily housing is a big deal. Like we're getting a lot more of multifamily housing in Boise. And we know there's opportunities for improvement there. So one of the things, like now, you don't just, if you move into a house, right, most people get trash, recycling, composting. You might not get composting, but most people get, as you saw from our participation numbers, they get all three of those. Multifamily housing, really, it depends on who owns the building, and some of the property management companies and the owners, they're into it and they want to recycle. Others aren't, and they don't care. And so we wanted to see, well, what does the community think? And obviously they're really supportive of ensuring that multifamily customers have the same opportunities that single family home customers do.
Commissioner Lockett.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe a question for you, Steve. Like, what's the holdup at the city level to not have this as a requirement now? Or, I mean, you'd have to have a minimum, right? So whatever multifamily, it can't be like maybe 2, but what would be the threshold, and what's stopping you all from doing it now or soon?
Chair, Commissioner, we haven't really gone that route yet. When multifamily housing first started getting big in Boise, this is probably as we started building out like the Broad Street area, the Central Addition, we had some conversations with folks at the time about maybe like a second chute, right? A recycling chute in addition to a trash chute. There was interest, but at that time, rents in the back end revenue weren't all that solid. Folks were taking a risk on building multifamily. Now we know it's working, and they're getting the rent. So we're going back out and asking. We haven't required. It's kind of a policy decision. We just haven't required it, but it's not to say that we can't. And that's one of the reasons we want to ask the questions. And then for some of the older multifamily housing, I think it's just a question of the owners and willingness to offer it, I think.
Yeah. And thanks, Steve. And just to add to that, you know, we definitely offer the service, and we incentivize it by having it's cheaper than trash service. So it's about half the cost of like if you had a 3-yard dumpster, a 3-yard recycling container would be about half the cost. So we incentivize it some people, you know, there's not room for the container. We solved that going forward, where we now require space to be, when they're building new buildings, to have space for recycling. That was like our little baby step before requiring it, period. We're like, well, you have to have space for it. So now you don't have an excuse, right? But we haven't, as Steve said, required it. It hasn't been a policy that we've pushed forward yet.
Yeah, I'd be super curious to learn more about that and see if there are economies of scale or anything that could reduce the overall cost of recycling program if it were required for multifamily housing around the city. Commissioner Ellis?
Thank you, Chair Gravatt. I love this discussion. It's very interesting. And so I thought about how, let's say 50%, 75%, we could actually get them to provide the recycling of these multifamily housing units. I would be so curious to see how much that would give us more time with the landfills, you know, if we divert this much.
Yeah.
So then you equate that to, like, if you spend this much, this is how much we save not having to go get a landfill. That's what it comes up for me. Perhaps a landlord could not give a care as much about that, but it's going to hit them eventually. They're you know, they're going to have to pay more for that. Anyway, that's the first thought that comes to mind.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, Commissioner Ellis. I agree. I think, you know, and we have some data now that looks at just multifamily housing and looks at what they're throwing away, so we can make some inferences as to, well, this amount would be recyclable if they can do it. One of the tough things with multifamily housing is that, you know, as you know, like you get newer people to the community a lot of times, and so they might not have the same knowledge that somebody who's lived here for 10 years has. And, you know, so we have to make sure we educate them well too, and go into the apartment buildings and talk to the property managers, make sure they have materials for these people, so they can understand the program. Because as we said before, like, people want to participate in things they understand and they have the knowledge of, but if they don't, then they're not quite as willing. Thanks. Moving on, similar question. Would you support policies requiring businesses to recycle? Also, really strong support there. Again, businesses, similar to multifamily housing, you know, they can recycle if they choose to. They don't have to. Little more difficult requiring businesses to recycle. There's probably some businesses don't really create any recycling. Most probably do. So we'd have to work on that and make sure we're not requiring somebody to do something that they can't do. Basically, same question for organic waste. Would you support requiring businesses that create a significant amount of organic waste, like restaurants or grocery stores, to participate in organic waste collection, meaning diversion program? 75% support there. So those last three slides, you can really see that the community does support us, you know, trying to either incentivize or require businesses and multifamily housing to do their part. And then these last two slides are on costs and fees. This one looks like it's kind of all over the place, but basically what we asked is, how much should people pay for additional trash cart? And that's, with your basic service, you get one trash cart, right? There's a couple different sizes, but you get one. And so you can get another trash cart if you create a lot of waste, or if you have a large family or what have you. Nothing wrong with that. But we wanted to see, like, well, what do people think you should pay for that extra trash cart? Right now, it's only about $7 for an extra trash cart, $7 to $8. So 23% thought you should just pay the same, but then you can see, combining all those other ones, that a fair majority think you should pay more. And the highest answer, the 24%, was that you should pay twice as much. It's kind of the thinking behind other utilities. If you use twice as much water, should you pay twice as much? If you use twice as much electricity, should you pay twice as much? So definitely people thinking of it from that perspective. So that's good to see when we're trying to create rates to understand what people are supportive of, right? And the next question, how much should people pay for additional recycling carts? Got a lot different response there, right? Most people, 61% thought you should pay the same rate. A little bit, you know, we combine all those, it's like 28% that thought you should pay more. So, you know, there's some support there that you should pay more. You know, it's hard to say. I think that most people are thinking, well, look, I'm doing the right thing. I'm making the extra effort to recycle and to compost. I shouldn't have to pay more for it. So interesting to see. Of course, those programs cost us money too. And so, you know.
Commissioner Moritz?
Thank you, Chair. So this slide and the one on trash, I think for a lot of people, they associate. So if you recycled more, you would use or need less trash space. And so I think that is part of the reflection of why people think it's okay to pay the same if you're a recycler. At the same time, there were quite a few people that thought if you're just going to throw everything away, then you should have to pay a premium. That's the way I interpret that data.
Yeah, Chair, Commissioner, that's interesting, and I think I can agree with that. It's you know, people they have a certain amount of waste, they're going to put it one place or another, right? And we want to incentivize them to put it in recycling or compost. Yeah. All right, and then just, you know, those are all the specific questions we're going over. At the end of the survey, we asked an open-ended question and said, hey, if you'd like to, you know, what other feedback would you like to give to the city? And there were some colorful comments I won't go over, but we will go over some of the common themes that we saw. And Melissa got, there was like 2,000, right, Melissa? Responses. So people like took the time, like half of them took the time to write something out. And Melissa used AI to kind of look at all those and focus them down into some key themes. And so these are some of the key themes we saw there on the open-ended question. Recycling collection frequency. So people thought like, hey, you know, we want to have our recycling collected more often. Or we want to have more space for it. And so, you know, these people are it's good to see they want to recycle, and they want to have enough space to do it and not have to put anything in their trash. That's a little pet peeve of mine. Like, one thing I will say about the recycling collection frequency is that you can get an extra recycling cart, and we probably don't do good enough job to say that, and it's almost free. You just have to pay the tax on it because of you know, just sales tax. So it's like 75 cents or something like that a month. You can also put out, like you see in that picture, extra recycling if you have it. You can put it out in your own personal can, or you can put it out in a cardboard box. So there are ways, if you have extra recycling, that you can put it out without having to get it collected every week, which would cost everybody a lot more money. We're willing to do it, but I just think that, you know, like trying to keep rates as low as possible. Mixed recycling, glass and orange bag, confusion and mistrust. So I think there was like a lot of comments that says like, you know, hey, we don't understand how does this work? Like, what plastics can you put here? What things can you put here? It's a little interesting in that they showed a lot of confidence in some of the other questions, but I still think that, you know, there's confusion, and people don't understand it completely, and it's hard because there's so many materials, like we said. The mistrust, I think, is just more of a of education, again, for us, telling people where materials go so they understand it, and keeping that going. Like glass, people think glass doesn't get recycled, but then we can show them on Instagram, we can show them the actual material that's made from the glass, right? And then commercial programs like we discussed, businesses and apartment complexes that, they want them to be involved. And that's all we have for the surveys. And then we're gonna let you guys kind of think about that. And Melissa's gonna lead a discussion on what your takeaways are from all that information. I know that was a lot, and hopefully it was interesting for people, and I'll pass it over to Melissa.
Thank you, Peter. Chair, Commission. That was a lot of information to take in. So this is, again, the good part where we get to hear from you, your analysis and your feedback and some of the questions. Love this discussion portion. This is where we learn a lot from you. So the first question we'd love for you to discuss here is just your key takeaways, what stood out to you.
I'll start. I have a bunch of ideas percolating as someone who's like designed surveys for years. I'd love to just get into the crosstabs and see what you use for like who's responding which way and what other ways we could get data to cut it most effectively. One note maybe for follow-up surveys. It seems like there are a lot of folks who promoting a survey in sort of a opt-in way, you do get a lot of self-selection bias, so that does up the numbers a lot. And I'm trying to think of ways to do more random sampling to get a broader picture, more representative sample for some of the especially the policy proposals moving forward, just to make sure that it's all broadly appealing and broadly we have the buy-in. And then I've heard just organically conversations that I've been ambiently around about the orange bag, and there is a lot of confusion, especially with adding new materials into the orange bag and trying to noodle through what a sort of counter education or how to use that as an element to reduce education campaign. Like if you don't want to deal with all the like confusion around the orange bag, maybe just don't get all of these things that may or may not go in. It's far from polished, but that's just an idea that I had just based on some of the feedback about the confusion, especially from a group that maybe be more self-selected and have more buy-in and awareness of the programs overall.
Mm-hmm.
We'll open it up to the commission. Commissioner Morgan.
Thanks, Chair. I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you, Peter. And appreciate having the survey go out. When I looked at the survey results initially, and doing like all the pre-homework, I was very impressed and amazed that there's so much knowledge and appreciation for these programs and that there is so much buy-in, like you alluded to earlier, Steve. Cities don't see this kind of participation in programming like this. So it just goes to show that we have a very amazing resident force that's just excited to be participating in things that they think will make their community genuinely better. And so that was one of my key takeaways from the quick survey overview. And one question I did have that we didn't get in the demographics was the source of how people found the survey. I know we alluded to that there would be a text string was sent out and there were a series of other methods to get people to participate in the survey, but did we ask, and I couldn't remember in the survey, how people found the survey so we could measure that?
Yeah. Chair Commissioner Morgan, we actually were able to watch that as those responses were coming in. So
Oh, okay.
the first day that that text went out, we got the majority of the responses. So we got about 3,000 responses.
Gotcha.
And then the survey responses that came from In the Know, social media, those were more like in the hundreds.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so it was really the majority of the responses. If you can imagine, if you get a link to a survey right
Yeah.
there in your hand on your device, it's much easier to just tap and answer that survey.
Yeah.
And to the chair's observation as well, yes, there's probably a little sampling bias for people who like to talk about trash
Yeah.
with us. But yes, the advantage of being able to use that text was the ease with which someone could just jump right into that survey and complete it. But as we noted, one of the disadvantages is that sampling on, say, multifamily housing residents is going to be a little harder to get at. So
Mhm.
we can weight some of that data, and then we can also make sure that we're including them in future focus groups as well in a representative way.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa.
You bet.
Chair, if I could continue. One thing that I was thinking about, there was a slide and I can't recall which one, but the note that I have here was food waste was one of the smaller portions for composting. And one of the reasons that I'm just hypothesizing that might be was there are a lot of limitations on what food waste is acceptable. So I can't just throw my slice of pizza into compost. That's not good. Based on the composting facilities that we do have. And so I think that just opts a lot of people out from sorting like their vegetable scraps that when they're chopping things for a soup and putting those things over there versus like a meal that you've already prepared that is not usable for the composting program. So I think that might be part of the buy-in, and it's just easy to take yard scraps and toss them in. So that was just me thinking out loud. And then my last thing was the Curb app would be very exciting for someone who is a solid waste nerd. But I think something, if that idea is being thrown around, one thing that I would highly promote is I never can remember the pickup schedule. We have it on our calendar and I still manage to forget. So we put both out every single time and we're like, oh, surprise, it wasn't the week that we needed it. So I think that would just be very helpful because I know it's likely by zip code which places get it each week. Or like every other week. And so just being able to know where I live, when I'm going to be able to like get my compost and my recycling picked up would be extremely helpful. But thank you so much for this presentation. I loved it.
Yeah, I also on the app, I wonder what other city services would go into just a City of Boise app with like a Curb It tab. I think that would be pretty exciting. Commissioner Lockett?
I'm sorry, you guys. I don't love the app at all. I don't mean to break your heart, but like the reason I stepped out earlier, since we try to personalize these meetings, sometimes I'll tell you, I was trying to get the Boise State basketball tickets transferred to my family because they're on the way to the game and they like waited till the last minute, which I told them not to. So it's like my son, blah, blah, blah. The point is like, I don't really love apps. I don't want more junk on my phone. I'm sorry, but if it were a City of Boise, that's different. But just to have a Curb It app, I don't know if you want to have someone manage it, spend the time, spend the money, build it. You can build apps pretty cheap anymore, I think, these days, but to have it be good, I really was surprised that, because clearly I'm in the minority. Like everyone else wants the app, but I am anti-app. So that response really surprised me, but didn't surprise others. So I'm just different.
Chair Commissioners, that's food for thought. And I love the way you're thinking bigger in terms of perhaps a citywide app. So maybe that's a future survey question that maybe we might want to ask. It seems there's some more fruitful discussion could be had there.
Commissioner Colette?
Thanks, Chair Gravett. I'm kind of with Commissioner Lockett on that. Maybe as someone who's now approaching 40, I get so just bogged down with all the stuff on my phone, but I would download a city app. So if it was a city app, had everything I need, I would absolutely do that. I will also say, I don't remember seeing this survey when it came out, but I religiously follow Boise Dev. And so when the city put out a survey on public art, as soon as it came out, it was on Boise Dev. I clicked on it, I responded to it. And so I think that that's probably a good outlet to connect with, as far as if you're trying to get additional outreach and you want people who generally are engaged with what's happening in Boise and care about what's happening in Boise, that would be a really good way to try and reach people.
Commissioner Thornfeld?
Thank you, Chair. I actually do agree with you too. Because like the thing about me is when it comes to apps, if I can get the same information by looking it up, I will not have an app for it. Cause like it's so bad that I do this, but I have probably like downloaded and deleted Google Earth about 15 million times because I'll need it like very rarely, but I can't get it online. So like, oh, okay, I have to do this. And then, but if we have the website, the City of Boise website, I don't see as many people, interacting with an app when you can just look it up.
Chair, Commissioner, that was one of the takeaways that we didn't present here, but that we did ask people what was the primary source of information about CURBIT programs, and the city website was the primary source.
Commissioner Ellis?
Thank you, Chair Gavat. My big takeaways were, wow, the 89% participation rate. I'm trying to remember the last time I saw a number. I think it was in the 80s. I don't know if it was ever in the 90s. Do you know, has it gone up or down, like from the last time we ever really would have checked that? It would have been 80s or 90s.
Peter?
Yeah, we really have have had a strong participation rate for over a decade now. Ever since we started the CURBIT program in 2009, people got excited about having that big recycling cart and being able to put a lot of stuff in there. We saw the participation grow, and we also structure our rates so that people get a discount when they recycle and when they compost. So we've had really high participation rates, as I said, for quite some time now. We show participation rates from our billing system to be in the low to mid 90s.
Okay.
So it's interesting, like we were talking about, like, well, any survey, there's going to be some bias to it, and we're not saying that this is 100% accurate, but it's nice to see that the survey results are close to the numbers that we already have. So that's good.
Thank you. The other comment I was going to make is I was glad to see that the people responding saw there's an opportunity with multi-housing and with businesses, and that's what you saw as well. So it's kind of two vectors pointing at the same thing. And then, I guess I have a ton of apps. I'd be fine with adding another one, but I think I go to the website a lot. I use the newsletter that comes to me a lot. So I'm wondering what the value would be beside those two things. And I have compost, glass, or not, sorry, just recycling and glass. I have those in my calendar, and I do look to say, oh, what is it? Thursday night. In fact, tomorrow night, I'll have to look. Okay, I'll tell my sons, you do that one, you do that one. They have their jobs that they have to do. So, but I wanted to comment because this reminded me, there's a neighbor that was just up in arms, and everybody comes to me, my neighborhood, because they know I know it. And they were so upset because they couldn't figure out when recycling was coming. And I said, well, look at your bin, it has, or whatever you got in the mail. I gave her the website. I helped her, and she still couldn't figure it out. And I was like, wow, okay, well, let's look at it together. So what it was is there was glass recycling and recycling, but it kept saying just recycling, and she could not figure, she thought it was every week. She thought that recycling was every week. And it took the two of us, because I kept trying to figure out what she was looking at and why she was so confused, but she was very confused and then got angry. So I don't know what it is about the way it's written. When you go to the link, it's the glass recycling and the recycling looks almost exactly the same. And I had to coach her and get her through that.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment, Chair Commissioner Ellis, and just I'm on board with the app, even though I'm old. I still I think it's just as I have a billion of them and I don't even care anymore. I just like, that's fine. But I think one of the things that the app could do that that the website can't is just what you're talking about, and what Commissioner Morgan spoke about is it's that notification. It's about service notification. So it might not really do so much as like, oh, I'm going to look up on my phone what goes in the energy bag, because you can just do that on the web. You don't need to do that. But for people who want a notification for, hey, and you just have to sign up for it, right? And then it's like an automatic, like, hey, it's recycling day, and it tells you that morning or the night before, hey, it's your glass recycling week. Hey, there's a snowstorm. We're not going to get to your neighborhood today, and we're going to pick you up next week. So I think the notification part of it is what would excite me the most. So just throwing that out there.
I agree. To me, it's a little bit synonymous with notifications you get from a school. So it's like, early pickup day today. It's very helpful. And also for like days when like that 1 or 2 days out of the year where kindergarten is not in session, and there's always a kindergartner that gets left at school because someone doesn't remember, they don't have it that day. So those notifications come in handy. And then I wanted to bring up one more thing is I get asked a lot lately about the tabletop digester, basically like a little digester. And I'm getting asked a lot like, why don't we use that? Oh, I didn't even know you could put food waste in your compost bin. And I'm like, yeah, it's my free way of being able to get rid of my food waste. In my mind, it's free. So anyway, I just wonder if that's coming up a lot. And I did actually speak with Lisa about that. She told me her opinion, and I was glad to know what it was. The spoiler, not in favor of it. But I can talk to you later about why. But I thought that was really neat to get that answered, but I'm getting that a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, Commissioner. Yeah, what Commissioner Ellis is referring to is that there's a couple different names for them. Do you remember one of the names?
One's called the Mill.
Yeah, the Mill, but
there's quite a few out there
it's
now.
basically like looks like, you can tell I'm old, a bread maker. It's about the size of like those old bread makers, but it's just a tabletop appliance where you can put in certain types of food waste, and it basically dries it out. It doesn't actually make compost out of it. It just kind of dehydrates it, and then they say, well, you can spread it over your lawn or something like that. But I'm not going to say I'm 100% a no on it, but I think that Lisa's right, that like you're better off putting it in your compost bin. We have a composting program here. That's the better route to go. We'll produce the compost. That compost can be used for a beneficial use. For other communities that don't have that, not really sure, but we'll definitely look into that and see if we can have something that's kind of more substantial or written up.
Well, this makes me think sort of for the compost program, maybe like even though we have a pretty high participation rate, at least from the survey, makes me wonder if there's a missing middle step, similar to how a lot of the recycling programs first started with the smaller bin that folks could have in their house and then put on their curb. If there's a lot of the gap between the food scraps getting to the bin down at the end of the driveway, just having a intermediary that some of these tabletop machines might be filling the gap for, maybe something to explore if that is something that folks would then participate more highly in food scraps.
Chair, Commissioner. Yeah, I agree with you. I think one of the things that we see and that we hear from people is sort of the gross factor when it comes to food waste, like what do I do with it and how do I transport it into my cart? And then some people don't want their composting cart to have food waste in it. They want to keep it clean, which is understandable, I guess. I mean, there's those type of people, but I think that we recently started a multifamily food waste drop-off program. It's just a pilot program, but we have a couple sites where people in multifamily can drop off their food waste. And we bought some small little totes that you can put your food waste in, and we're giving them out sparingly because we don't have too many of them, but we're giving them out sparingly, and we're trying to see like, oh, okay, is that a barrier for people? Like, I know it is for me. Like, I have a small kitchen, and I'm like, well, where do I put this? I have my trash here, I have my recycling here. Where do I put the food waste, and what container should it be, right? So I think you're onto something there. And then also perhaps maybe that is where for some people the something like a mill or a dehydrator comes in, is that like if they have that and they can put their food waste in there and then it's dehydrated, it's not gross to them, and they'll use it, and then they could put that dehydrated waste in our compost. So I like both those ideas. Thank you.
Okay, Chair Commission, we've got about 15 minutes left here. Thank you. You've taken in a lot of information on the survey. If you have additional thoughts after this, we would love to hear them. So, but we just want to make sure that we have time for our topics selection. So let's go ahead and move into our fiscal 25 topics discussion.
Okay, Chair, thank you. So we just wanted to spend the last 15 minutes talking about potential topics for the rest of 25. Just so you're aware, we know that recycled water is, well, it's really important to us. It's such a big program. We're going to be coming back to you in I believe it's the May session with more updates. Peter's team is likely to come back in February and May to have you serve as one of our focus groups related to the solid waste strategic plan. So this was an opening kind of discussion with you all. Similar to like, as we start to frame up some of those options, just like we'll have a focus group out in the community, we want to also have that with you all. So that'll be another topic that gets covered. So solid waste has already been identified for 25. And so we're curious if there was another topic or two that you wanted to hear more about. Maybe it's a one-time in-depth discussion for us to get feedback on. Maybe it's a multi-series set of discussions. But if there was anything in particular, two areas that jump out to us are the Public Works Arts Master Plan and implementation. That's potentially something that we could have ready to roll in February. I know that we're interested in hearing from the community on what they'd like us to focus in on. We've already got that off and running, but there's going to be a fair amount of funding for that program based on the percent for art ordinance that we have at the city. And then drawing a blank now on the other topic. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Utility affordability. Thank you, Commissioner Wards. That's becoming a larger issue. Affordability generally is becoming a larger issue across the city, whether it's housing affordability, utility affordability. So we're trying to think about affordability programs and evolving ours, frankly, to try to match some best-in-class cities like San Antonio Water Systems, considered to be kind of a gold standard of affordability programs. So that's another topic that we wanted to throw out there. And I'm interested to hear any feedback on other items that you might want to hear more about.
Awesome. I would start off by saying that my preference is definitely to be deferential to staff in seeing how that the commission could be the most useful for the boots on the ground in our role as sort of representatives and liaisons to our parts of the community. That said, just sort of selfishly as an individual nerd, I would be interested in occasional updates on the geothermal program and some of the build out there. And I'll open it up to the other commissioners. Commissioner Morgan.
Thanks, Chair. I would also second like whatever best use for us is. We love being a focus group. Like the past year has been vastly different than previous years, and I've really appreciated that new transition. And so however that's useful. I didn't think I'd be excited about recycled water, and you all have converted me. I selfishly am also very excited about solid waste and would love to continue to hear about the recycled water program. And happy to have other topics brought to us. I know we mentioned previously that it's nice to focus in on one topic because then we can really sink our teeth into it and be as useful as possible because we have a little bit more meatier understanding. However, I'm happy to also just like flex our flexibility and be able to dive between topics as it's relevant for the Public Works Department.
Chair, thank you for that feedback, Commissioner. And I should say that you've already told us that you wanted to be, the solid waste strategic plan is a topic we're going to carry forward with in 25. You already told us that. And then we recommend the recycled water program. I should have mentioned that. But the other topics are kind of what I'm hearing is maybe it's where there's some one-offs that we just want to come in and get some detailed feedback on a specific program.
Yeah.
And geothermal could certainly be one of those if there's interest in that.
Commissioner Colette?
Public art is something I'm very, very interested in. So even if it becomes something that's maybe we need someone from the commission to kind of focus in on something specifically outside of these meetings, I would happily be the representative for public art.
Public art.
Commissioner Mertz?
Thank you, Chair. I would just echo what's already been said just about the utility, the reset that was done so that the department can come back and use the commission for really current, not make work at all, but really actually something that you need help on in a timely way. So I personally prefer, not to pile lots of different agenda items on. I think if you can do a little bit of a deep dive in something, but the idea of being agile enough or flexible enough to say the department could really use the input on this topic and let's shift to that. All these things are interesting. I think utility affordability is kind of a gem to start working on and hearing more about and learning maybe what other cities have done. Thank you.
Commissioner Thornfeld?
Thank you, Chair. I kind of agree with that, like utility affordability and public art. I think those are both a little bit unique because we would have an opportunity to talk more about what the public wants and less about what they like understand. Because I feel like with these more like science-y kind of complicated topics, it's really about how the public can understand it and what we can do to make it easy for them to understand it. And I think having an input of what they want would be really, really interesting.
Commissioner Ellis?
Thank you. Well said, Chair Thornfeld. I like that. Well, and I was gonna add, I agree with everybody. Use us how is best for you, and I do like the deep dive. And then I was gonna make a selfish request that I would love to be a part of the strategic plan piece that comes up because February might be my last one because I'm going to stick to the 4-year suggested term when I interviewed for this. So might be my last one. That would be fun to be a part of the strategic plan for Corbett.
Go ahead, Commissioner Lockett.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say I'm in support of all 4. I didn't know if you want us, not required to answer, but if that's helpful, these look great.
Thank you. One last idea. It's not a topic in itself. It's more of a lens that I'm interested in starting to integrate more, and this may be above and beyond the direct scope of the commission. But as the city, as our community continues to grow and things get more intertwined, I would be really interested in sort of navigating some of the intersection between things like the 4 topics here or geothermal or any of these other things on some of the other areas that the city works in and land use, the planning and zoning, especially with the modern zoning code. How might some of the proposed policies and ideas, outreach, some of the physical investments that we're making in the community, how might those interact with folks that are not at this table necessarily from the planning and zoning community, from the community engagement side? We do have community engagement at the table pretty often, but just looking at that intersection to make sure that we're all moving in the same direction, or just confirm that we're course correcting as needed, so we're not setting ourselves up to butt heads with any maybe proposed developments down the line, or areas of town that are steered in economic versus residential areas, things like that.
Chair, I really appreciate that comment, in part because it's a top of mind topic for the city. And with the passing of the modern zoning code, there are implications for that, for everyone who works at the city and all the departments. And we're trying to be much more deliberate about connecting the dots between, like, let's say we're focusing on intentional density corridors like Fairview State. That certainly has implications for libraries. That has implications for our infrastructure. So we are starting down that path of being much more intentional of connecting those dots, where maybe in the past we haven't been as intentional, but it certainly is a topic that, let me think about that one. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I say that knowing that at the end of the day, it is the mayor and city council who are sort of focused on that sort of area between all of these different silos. But any way that we can, be an ounce of prevention so that the decisions are more clear and easier down the road, I think would be a good use of our time, short of starting some sort of like interagency commission for the city. But if we can, just make sure that we're all marching to the same beat. Any other ideas or comments from the commission? All right, hearing none, I think we can wrap up this discussion. Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the commission today? Commissioner Lockett?
I just wanted to thank you, Chair, for being our fearless leader again for another year, and Jim for stepping up to be Vice Chair. Vice Chair, is that what it's called? Chair. I think that's great. And thanks, Jen, for your service over the years. And yeah, thanks to everyone else. This was a great meeting. Appreciate your staff time. Pass that along to everyone, please, Steve. That was great. I'm glad they were able to get out of here after their presentations were over, but they were really helpful as well. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Seconded.
They're laughing.
All right, if there is nothing else to come before the commission, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Morgan?
Chair, I move to adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Motion and second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hearing none, the motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.